So I would like to ask Councillor John Toy to come forward, please. We have an award. So the council has been working very hard on its Armed Forces Covenant. Councillor John Toy to come forward, please.
It's fine.
So we've been working very hard and we have now achieved the Silver Award as council for the Armed Forces Covenant.
One thing that I'm on to get this is the officers in this council that deliver this. They're the ones that do the work, that go through all the departments to make sure we meet all the requirements. And I know they're already working on those. So my thanks goes to them.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, and thank you to all the staff for working on that with you. Apologies for absence. Could I have apologies for absence, please?
I've received apologies from councillors Fitch Tillett, Housden, Mancini Boyle, Punchard, Sims and Spagnola.
Are there any others that anyone knows of? No, thank you. So we go to the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of September. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of the meeting? So if no one's showing any hands, is everyone happy to accept those records as a true meeting? Could I have a proposal, please? Thank you, Councillor Fisher. And the seconder, Councillor Shires. Can we all move? Looks to be Councillor Dixon, are you in agreement or just checking? Councillor Fitzpatrick? Yeah, thank you. Just checking.
I'm abstaining, Madam Chairman. I wasn't present.
Right. Okay. Right, do we have any declarations of interest from members, please? Councillor Halliday.
I've got a pecuniary interest in item 12, but I have dispensation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have an interest, a non-pecuniary interest in item 15. Lovely. Nobody else with declarations? Lovely. Items of urgent business. I'm not aware of any. There are none. Chairman's communications. So, you'd like to put up the first picture? And I'm sure my deputy here will tell you about the service she attended.
Well, this was brilliant. It was full of pomp and ceremony. The High Sheriff is the oldest political position in the country. I think it dates back millennia. Anyway, it was, people were dressed in beautiful outfits and it was very uplifting, actually. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you very much for attending. So then we had a reception at Sandringham House in aid of the Purfleet Trust, which I had been very much looking forward to, but unfortunately I went down with COVID on that day and was unable to go. But the Purfleet Trust was set up as a charity to provide help for single homeless people in the King's Lynn and West Norfolk area. And they do an awful lot of good work. So this was a very worthy cause and I was very sorry I couldn't join them that evening. So, then we both went to White Village Hall opening. Victoria went in her capacity as a member of the
Sustainable
Communities Fund, and I went in my capacity as chairman of the council. Brilliant building, absolutely fantastic what they've done with all the money they raised. They did an amazing job of getting a new facility for their local community. And if you need to hire a village hall in that neck of the woods, I would highly recommend this one. Absolutely beautiful inside. And then that's holiday.
Thank you. This was our service on the Friday before Remembrance Day, and it was well attended. And again, it was a very reflective service with the in Flanders Fields read out, and I think everyone felt it was respectful.
Thank you. I was very sorry not to be there. It's an important time of the year. Lovely. And that ends Chairman's communications for this month. So we now go to leaders' announcements. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate communities across the district for their numerous poignant and moving services and acts of remembrance on Remembrance Sunday and in the previous days. Secondly, I'd like to thank those who have been assisting their communities during the recent and ongoing flooding impacts. This, of course, has significantly impacted Botterheim and Hickling, but also locations such as Leatheringset, Sheringham and properties in Bodham. And particular thanks to our flood wardens who often go above and beyond in serving their locality. We have some very good news, and some of you are in the room certainly aware of this. We had an unexpected announcement in respect of Fakenham in terms of the levelling up funding, and I'm pleased to say we have secured nearly £9.9 million, subject to some conditions, for the provision of sports leisure swimming facilities at Fakenham at Trep Lane. And of course, this was one of the very first conversations I had as an incoming leader with the authority as to what extent such a project would be achievable. So I'm really so pleased. We've obviously seen quite a lot of attention about the town in recent weeks, concerns over empty shop units, but there's interest in those. And I think there's somewhat of a buzz. So I think this is really, really good. It's obviously quite a lot for us to do in a short amount of time. So obviously we'll be working closely with the town council and other partners to achieve that facility by March of 2026. And in other good news, we are pleased to know that 2 of our new public convenience facilities have been awarded a Diamond Award by Loo of the Year, and they were at Queen's Road, again in Fakenham, and Stearman's Yard in Wells. And I think that's recognition that we continue to provide new facilities despite the significant budgetary constraints and do it well. I'd like to thank members who contributed to the remaining annual action plan members workshops, with the annual action plan subsequently approved at the previous cabinet meeting. And we look forward to working with officers and communities in achieving the outcomes we wish to see. And finally, our peer review has also been published in the last month, and we thank you all again for contributing to it. And we're very pleased with the report findings, recognising this is a good council, and we look forward to agreeing a plan to do even better still. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we have public questions. I thought we were going to have 2 speakers, but I believe we only have Mr. Musson. Would you like to come forward, sir?
Thanks. Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just let me get settled.
Thank you very much.
While the council were getting themselves sorted out,
Yeah,
my congratulations to you as an ex-service and myself for your achievement for the armed forces currently. That was good effort.
Well, thank you.
Much
But
appreciated.
it is the officers that deliver it. But thank you.
Yeah,
I'm honoured to be that representative. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Right.
Right, are we
Fine.
ready?
Yep.
So now we do have 2 speakers. I just said, I thought we were going to have 2 speakers. And then the door opened.
was like a grand entrance. Yeah, thank you. My apologies for my tardiness.
I've just been coming all, I'm on. Oh, I'm on now. Okay, yeah, apologies for my tardiness. I've been stuck in traffic all the way from County Hall. But anyway, but thank you for allowing me to ask a question tonight. And I think you've had prior view of the question, but I'll just read it out so that all the members of the public know what it is. As you've seen from the pictures of the B1150, there is already a safety issue with the current volumes of traffic. The incidence of HGVs and other traffic mounting the curb and endangering local people is being brought to my attention almost every week. Children and their parents trying to cross the B1150 at Ling Way on their way to school often find the road almost impossible to cross safely. This will only get worse if the local plan is approved and North Horsham gains an additional 1,800 homes. Will the leader and members for North Horsham commit to work with me and the B1150 Special Interest Group to improve safety on the B1150, particularly through Coltishall and Horsted? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your question. I think we've heard similar questions on this aspect of the local plan impact on Coltishall as regards the development in North Walsham before. There is obviously a statutory process in local plan making that we have to follow. So we've agreed an engagement programme, first of all, with Broadland District Council, in whose province it is situated. We've arranged a stakeholder meeting on the 27th of November with Broadland Council. The traffic impact assessment report has been completed. A forward copy has been sent to Broadland Council so that they can digest it ahead of that stakeholder meeting next week. Following that meeting, there will then be a public consultation on the impact assessment of traffic associated with the scheme on the 8th of December in Coltishall. Details will be published in the parish magazine if they've not already been published. I'm told it's the 8th, but I will check that and clarify it for you so that we get the date right, obviously. And we need to obviously advertise the correct date. And once that has been considered by Broadland District Council, it will then be rolled out for consultation with members of the public, parishioners obviously in Coltishall itself, and if the B1150 Special Interest Group is part of that meeting, is associated with that meeting, which I highly suspect it will be, then yes, of course, we will engage with them, but not exclusively, because we have a duty to be impartial. But I just want to say that as regards process, these are the sort of objections we generally get at a planning committee when the developer comes forward, whichever one it's going to be, or the consortium of developers comes forward, and we deal with the issues at that stage. So we've got, but before we get to that stage, we've got to satisfy the government inspector that our local plan is sound, legal, and deliverable. And that process starts on the 22nd of January and finishes on the 4th of March. And that's a hurdle that we are all subject to. And it will obviously be for the inspector to consider all the reports and the consultation responses as well from the public following our meeting in December. And then, of course, we will have to make a decision based on that review by the inspector. So that's exactly where we are, and that's the process, unfortunately, that we need to follow as a district authority in order to be compliant with local plan making process in the legislative sense. So I hope that that has gone some way to allay some of your fears. The important thing here is that we know that traffic increases and gets worse all over the county. What we have to determine, what we have to separate out is the impact currently and what additional impact the development, if completely built out or partially built out, will have. And it's a high test under the National Planning Policy Framework. The impact just doesn't have to be just worse, it has to be severe. And that's an engineer assessment as to whether it will be severe or not. And we will be finding that out in the course of the next few weeks.
You have a supplementary?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you very much for that. I do understand the local plan and how it comes together and the legal process, and obviously we know we're within that. However, you know, a significant part of your local plan is the extension of North Walsham. In fact, without that, it would fail. You know that, and I know that. So the likelihood is that there will be an extension to North Walsham. And so that's where we are. We're trying to preempt that and think, where are we going? I've seen the traffic assessment or the draft traffic assessment. I've been through that today. And I'm not saying it's severe, but certainly is significant, the additional traffic which will flow through Coleshill and Horsted. It's in the region of 25% through the high street. I mean, that's significant. Some people may not say it's severe, but I would suggest so. I do think it is significant that people cannot get across the road to take their children to school currently. They don't feel safe doing that. So I think all of these things, what I'm trying to ask you to do tonight, really, I know you can't make decisions, you can't preempt planning, I absolutely understand that. However, what I would say is that when we get to that point, when plans are put before you, that you do consider all of the different mechanisms which you have available to you as a council, and you ensure that there's sufficient planning conditions put in place. So there's Section 106 monies, etc., etc. So that framework is there to ensure that the safety measures that we need in Coleshill and Horsted can be put in place. So that's my ask of you, that you will actually ensure that that is put in place we can't get rid of the traffic that will be generated, but we can ensure that there are some safety measures for the people who live there. And that's my task as a county councillor, and obviously as a district councillor too, like yourselves. Thank you.
Well, if I can just come back on what you said very, very briefly, what we will be focusing on is the extent of the additional impact, but how that can be reduced, softened, and mitigated by measures recommended in the assessment report. And of course, we will be very, very enthusiastic to ensure that those are the best mitigation measures that can be delivered for residents in Coltishall Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Well, Councillor Waymark's covered quite a bit of what I was going to say. So, and I take on board your points about the process that you have to go through. And I've registered myself to be a part of that process in the new year with Planning Inspector as well, along with the other members of the group. So we'll be taking an active role in that. Is it possible to show those pictures again on the screen, please, of the traffic? So we're talking about the impact and the volumes of traffic, and we keep coming back to this word safety. So I understand about the developments and the plans. I've had it explained to me numerous times. My major concern is safety now. And if it's bad now, with the advent of this development, it's only going to get worse. And I'd just like to let you digest one thing as well, as we're going to digest all the information you're giving us. The Highway Code, Rule 145, says you must not drive on or over pavements unless it's an emergency or get to property, right? That is a law, okay? That's legally binding. That is going on every week, probably every day in our village. The law is being broken. Now, I don't blame the drivers of the vehicles, okay? The simple fact is that the highway network through that village is not suitable, it's not fit for purpose. And that is a fact, and there is the proof. If you scroll some of those, there's vehicles driving on pavements. That puts the lives of our community in danger. That's a simple fact. Forget about, the congestion, it's only going to get worse. So I really only have one question now, is that how exactly will you ensure that the mitigation that's proposed in the draft traffic assessment will make residents of Coltshall and Horsfield feel safer rather than less safe? Because as it stands, the mitigation for a bus cage outside the War Memorial and a right-hand turn on the Wroxham Road will not stop that happening. So as mitigation goes, I'm afraid it's pretty ineffective.
I think, Councillor Brown, do you want to come back? I mean, I have to say some of what you've said, Mr Musson, is actually relatable to Broadland Council, because what is happening now is their responsibility. We all have a joint responsibility across to try and do what we can to help each other. But I don't know whether Councillor Brown, you have anything you wish to add?
Yes, I think we have to draw a clear distinction between the excessive traffic that Coltshall experiences currently, which with respect is really not at this time. It may be if the development brief is accepted, the local plan's adopted, and this moves forward to fruition as a development. But at the moment, it's an issue for Broadland Council to look at, and in conjunction with the County Council Highways Department. And I have no hesitation in saying, I hope that you get some satisfaction from the County Council Highways Department on what measures can be done, irrespective of whether a development takes place in North Walsham, to alleviate the traffic that you're experiencing right now.
I appreciate that. But I also understand that when you're going forward with a plan like this, you do have a duty to cooperate across the border with your neighbouring councils. So, and we all know what's going to happen if this thing happens. It's just going to get worse. And that cooperation, I haven't been experiencing that. In fact, on the contrary, we've had a lot of problems with the cooperation and getting information. Traffic impact assessment, as an example, we're only going to get a sight of it now, and it's something like 119 pages for a meeting on Monday, which gives us barely enough time to use your words, digest it. So yes, I understand the political or boundary issues and things like that. Anyway, I'll move my minute now, so I'll.
Thank you, Mr Musson. Thank you both for coming. I'm assuming that you would like to now both escape before we go into the meat of the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Adams, do you have any appointments to committees, please?
Yes, I do. I'm happy to announce that Councillor Gary Fall will become chair of the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party, with Councillor Adam Varley his vice chair. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Andrew Brown for his service to that committee during some of the most important years we've really had for that committee, so that working party. So big thanks to you. And secondly, Councillor Kim Toy will be appointed to the, I believe it's correct, it's the Norfolk Museums Committee. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very
As a
much.
substitute, I should say, with Councillor Withington remaining the main appointed member. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Cushing, do you have any appointments you would like to make?
No, I don't. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Madam
Right.
Chairman, if I just may briefly say a big thank you to the staff in the planning department for the support they've given me whilst I've chaired the working party for the last 4.5 years, and we have done some serious work with the local plan with various supplementary planning documents, and we started with one neighbourhood plan and we now have 4.5 with Wells Part Heard. So I think we've achieved a significant amount of progress in the last 4.5 years. Thank you. Madam
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Right, so we're going to move to portfolio holder reports now. May I remind you that no member may ask more than one question, plus a supplementary, and we have 30 minutes time for this section of the meeting. So do we have questions, please? Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Today, the government has given Fakenham a fantastic Christmas present with the allocation of a nearly £10 million grant to build a swimming pool and a 3G pitch as well. It's not only enhance the town, but also provide considerable enjoyment and health benefits for residents of Fakenham and indeed all the surrounding parishes. I'd like to add my thanks to all those who put the bid together, the Chief Executive, Officer Hems and his team, who did an enormous amount of work last year and with the resubmission, and did any councillor as well. I would ask the leader if he could also join me in expressing thanks to Jerome Mayhew MP, the Member of Parliament for the Broadland and Fakenham constituency. I know Jerome has done an awful lot of work behind the scenes to lobby ministers in order to get the money directed towards Fakenham, and I think that would be appropriate and appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. And obviously, you know, I'm delighted that this has occurred. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do to achieve it now, and look forward to working with you and the rest of the Fakenham community to do that. Yes, of course, I will certainly thank Jerome. I intended to do that personally, I must say, but I haven't had time to do that yet. But certainly, for the record, I'm grateful for his support for our levelling up bid. Obviously, it wasn't quite as, you know, we'd expected. It's been announced in the autumn statement, so it was a big surprise to all of us. And you know, I think our track record in achieving the reef at Sheringham has hopefully strengthened our case for this investment. But certainly the support of yourselves as local members, the town council, but also the MPs has been very valuable. So thank you all, and look forward to getting this done.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a question for Councillor Ringer. I believe we soon are going to have a duty to collect food waste. Is there any information on when this service will begin?
Thank you very much. Yes, really pleased that we'll be introducing food waste collections in the future. The government have mandated that we provide this service by the end of March 2026. As a council officer already beginning work, looking to investigate how quickly we can get that running. So we may even be in a position to roll that out in advance. One thing we are waiting for is how much money the government will provide in new burdens funding. At the moment, that remains unclear. But that will hopefully meet the reasonable costs of introducing that service. I was fortunate enough to visit an anaerobic digester in Attleborough and see the work that they were doing there, and that may well be where our food waste ends up going in the future. So we don't have an exact date for when we will roll out, but it will be by the end of March 26. It won't just be domestic. We'll also be offering that service to trade customers as well, which I think will be really useful for our large hospitality industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vardy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's a question for Councillor Heinrich. Would it be possible to know which businesses and community groups are benefiting from the Rural England Prosperity Fund, please?
Thank you, councillor. I hesitate to name them yet, as some details still need to be agreed, and part of it may be in commercial confidence. However, I can provide a written answer for you in the near future.
Yeah, look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening all. Question for Councillor Blathwaite, if I may. Recent rainfall has created significant flooding issues for us out east in the district. I'm thinking of Higham and Hickling and other places. Could you give us an update, please, Councillor Blathwaite, on that current situation and any further information you may have? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Penfold. Situation at the moment is water is slowly receding in most parts. However, the further extent of the floodplain, where it is closest to homes, the water is holding. This is despite and thanks to the Broads IDB, who have been pumping strenuously where habitation is threatened with additional pumps. The extent of the flooding stretched right across our area from Houghton, Horning, Hickling, Barton, and Horsey, etc. And it has been hugely extensive. We are now in a period of neap tide, but the spring tide is approaching rapidly, and the water table is high. The fields are saturated. It will not take a major rain event for those fields to again flood across to the floodplains. So we are in a precarious position. I would say that we have had good help from many agencies. I would not include Anglia Water particularly in that statement. I would also say that the flood wardens, particularly I have to say in Potter Heigham, have worked wonders, long hours, volunteering their time, protecting homes. And I feel I know that the Prime Minister is a busy man, but when he drove through Potter Heigham, he couldn't fail to see the floods. And I wish he had had time to thank the wardens who were warned of his coming, but his limousine swept through the area. So yes, we wait with concern and trepidation as to weather events this winter, and we will continue. I know all the agencies will continue to do their best to keep homes dry. I would just say that in Hickling, since Storm Babbitt, there are still homes that are unable to use their toilets. There has been no pumping by Anglia Water, and the residents have been using the public toilet in Hickling, which is a North Norfolk facility. And I'll leave it there. But as I say, there has been real discomfort for many people, and this is not going to go away. Thank you.
Hankins, thank you, Madam Chair. It's Hankins, actually.
Sorry.
Could Councillor Adams give us a more information as to what are the two schemes that were held up by nutrient neutrality that have now been enabled?
Thank you.
Yes, I think that refers to my portfolio holder report, doesn't it? So I understand, forgive me if I'm wrong, that they were Susted and Skyton. I hope I've got that correct. And I believe they were individual property schemes delivering their own mitigation on site or adjacent. So obviously it's a success, you know, in itself. I appreciate it's two properties, but thank you to the to both East Lord legal team and the planners for progressing those applications.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle.
A question for Councillor Ringer. It's regarding environmental protection. It mentions that the officers who carry out the vital works to ensure our safety have been under significant pressure recently. And I wondered if you had a target date for when they'd be able to be back to full speed again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. First of all, I just want to pay tribute to the staff in our environmental protection team. They've worked incredibly hard. They have been under pressure due to having a slightly reduced capacity, you could say. But I'm pleased that we are recruiting. We've got some new starters coming in shortly. There's active recruitment going on for another post at the moment. I don't know exactly the date that we will be at full capacity, other than it's an improving picture. And just to say that throughout all of this time where there has been the reduced capacity, we've still been carrying out our statutory functions, and the team have been working incredibly hard. So I'd just like to thank them.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Yeah, I've got a question for Councillor Adams, please, regarding the corporate peer challenge. And the question is, do we have a target date for the peer review action plan?
Oh, thank you, Don. Okay, so if I'm correct, I believe we're looking at a draft action plan before Christmas, which will need to be discussed in the new year. So yes, it won't be long. It'll be January cabinet meeting. If all goes to plan, of course, we do have quite some time yet to deliver the action plan, but that is our currently envisaged timescales. And thank you again to all of you for your various contributions to the work there. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, did you wish to speak? Councillor Bayes.
Yes, I have a question for Councillor Heinrich. Can Councillor Heinrich give his view on how Stalham High Street Task Force is progressing?
You'll appreciate that, given that there is an involvement of another agency, things can be occasionally slow. As you will see from our report, we had a meeting of the High Street Task Force as a working party a couple of weeks or so ago to explore where next. The onus at the moment is on Stalham Town Council and Stalham residents and businesses to come back to us with the proposals of the sort of thing they might want. There is currently no budget to support it. If a strong case can be made, we can no doubt look at it, assuming there is a reasonable chance of it in the next financial year, which we know will be tough, but it is progressing at the rate expected.
Thank you. Councillor Bull.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is for Wendy Fredericks, please, Councillor Fredericks. With relation to the housing and bringing back in stock of housing that's being, shall we put it nicely, misused or not utilised correctly by people, what steps are we taking to ensure that it's easy for people to report this, and what steps further are we taking to ensure that it's a timely resolution to these?
Thank you, Councillor Bull. So we have this amazing empty homes officer. And he has been working really hard and has reduced the empty homes by 92 from April to October this year. The number of empty homes from, can't even speak today, sorry, 92 less. So yeah, he's doing an astounding piece of work. What I'm intending to do is working with comms to put something out publicly to say this is how you report an empty home, and then also in our next Outlook magazine as well that goes for every house. So I'm astounded by his work, to be fair. I really didn't think it was going to be that quick, the results. So yeah, that's what I'm intending to do.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald, please.
I've got a question for Councillor Brown. I got a lot of great feedback about the development roadshow that's been going on. I'm wondering what Councillor Brown can do to get the message out there to parish councils to attend it.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, for your question. So, linked to the Planning Service Improvement Plan, we've had a series of road shows, which the first one was in Stalham in September. We had one this week in Wells, which attendance at both of those events was excellent. We will obviously be advertising the next one, which I believe is in Holt, well in advance. We will get the usual communication or invitations out via email to parish councils. It will be in the usual print media and hopefully on social media as well. And it's obviously very important that we engage with our communities. The audience earlier this week at Wells on Monday evening was almost exclusively parish councillors and town councillors in Wells and its vicinity. They were very appreciative of the two senior officers giving up their time to deliver the roadshow and particularly to answer questions from the floor. So we will continue this programme. We believe it's the right thing to be doing, to go out and communicate with our residents and our communities. So that's what we will continue to do as part of the Planning Service Improvement Plan moving forward, which started a year ago and should be finished in the spring of next year. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Netherway.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Councillor Fredericks. I understand we've got that 92 long-term empty homes have been brought back into use so far this fiscal year. May I ask how many are for private rent or sale, please?
Thank you for your question. In short, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can certainly get a written response to you if that's any good.
That's great, thank you.
Right. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, thank you. Also for Councillor Fredericks, I think it's gratifying that homes being brought back into use. One concern for me is, and I think it's for those of us in some of the rural areas, when housing associations decide actually to sell homes, so it actually takes it out the housing stock. I know the money's reused elsewhere. I know there's a cost in refurbishing them, but certainly in my ward it's happened over the years, and we've lost 2 and 3 bedroom homes, but more importantly we've lost homes for local people with that, and I just wonder if that's a discussion she's had with them as well, and if not, is that something you would take on and do? Because it's great that it might produce money for 2 or 3 more homes somewhere else in the district, but it's taking it away from rural areas where it's really hard to find rental homes. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Fitzpatrick. It is a conversation we have monthly with the housing association. So we sit down with them and we work through the financials and the viability of those homes. And I'm glad to say that there's a lot less of them going for sale now than there ever has been. So we actually sit down and we grade them ourselves independently. So there are a lot fewer, as we call, disposals. In fact, I've been speaking to one of the housing associations about meantime houses. So yes, they might not add up over the long haul, but can we help accessing grants to make them viable in the short term? Because obviously we've got this huge housing crisis at the moment. So yeah, we're doing everything we possibly can on that. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands, but if anyone else has got a question, now is your chance. Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to get in, whilst we're thinking on forces this evening, that it will be a question for Councillor Fredericks. But can I just first say that part of the work that's gone on with that is to ensure that people doing social prescribing in this council go out with the Forces Connect and the Veterans Gateway app. And I would recommend all councillors to have that on their phone as a reference. And part of the work was to ask early on through the Help Hub if there was a Forces connection. That way we can target where assistance comes from. So my question is, with that, knowing that through the Help Hub, we ask about veterans early on, is Councillor Fredericks able to give me any indication of how many have actually been recorded through the Help Hub? Or if she could get me that information. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Toy. As you know, Sonia Shooter is the manager for the Help Hub, and I'm sure that she'll be able to give a written response to that. So I'll write that down and get her to write to you, if that's okay.
That's great. No, thank you.
Okay, last call for questions now. Lovely. Thank you all very much. So we move to item 12 on this evening's agenda, recommendations from Cabinet. Now, there are three sort of blocks here, so I'm going to intend to take them as three separate blocks. Okay, so I ask Councillor Shaz now to talk about the Cabinet agenda, item 10, budget monitoring, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, all the Cabinet items are mine, so I'll try not to take up too much time. So on page 63 of the agenda pack, you will see the budget monitoring for period 6. And at this point, I must thank Christopher Cushing for his staying power, because this will be the third time that he'll have heard this report. So I do appreciate that you turn up every time. So this has been through Cabinet and overview and scrutiny, and the change that's been made through that process on page 65, 2.3, we'll see the staff pay award, which wasn't included in previous reports. What I want to do at this point is thank officers, and it's not just the finance team who do a fantastic piece pulling all this together, but it's every officer in the council who holds a budget, because there is particular pressure on them at the moment. If we look at the projected deficit, which I would like Councillor Fredericks to talk about shortly, because that includes the impact of homelessness, but every single officer in this organisation has got responsibility for the budget and their spend, and I know it's a lot of pressure, not just for us, but for officers in this council. On page 70, you will see the explanation for recommendation 3 under 3.12. 3.13 is the explanation for recommendation 4, which comes from external funding. 3.14 is recommendation 5. 3.15 is recommendation 6. And on page 71 is the explanation of recommendation 7 under 3.18. There isn't anything else that I want to add to that, because if we look on page 67 under 2.8, we will see a large cause of our deficit that we're looking at currently due to the crisis that we're facing in homelessness. But I will ask Councillor Fredericks to speak to that, because that falls under our budget.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Shires. So as you will see, the cost of temporary accommodation has risen quite significantly. So when we usually think about our budgets for temporary accommodation, it's to spend on nightly accommodation for homeless households. And that would usually come in about 350,000, 450,000. This year, we are looking at a gross of 1.3 million. That is a massive leap. And every pound of that represents keeping someone safe, keeping someone warm. I don't begrudge spending 1.3 million on doing that, but we need help to cover that gap. We need significant help with that. Liverpool just announced that they will be going into their 1.4 because of temporary accommodation costs, going into millions and millions. Thankfully, we're not at that point. But you will see a lot of councils, district councils, borough councils having the same problem. And I was invited to speak at the Emergency National TA Conference a few weeks back because we needed to highlight the problems in North Norfolk, that we don't have the hotels or the bed and breakfasts or the really nice facilities to place homeless people into. In fact, the majority of people that we place in bed and breakfast are out of district. Bed and breakfasts here are a mainstay of our tourist industry. So we look elsewhere. And the price of a week in temporary accommodation to the council is probably about £700 a week. And we get a tiny fraction of that back from the government. So when you're looking at those figures, I just want you to think about the people behind it and their suffering and their mental health. And I also want you to think about the housing officers as well, that are having to deal with this every day, deal with important, vulnerable, homeless families who are desperate, and the toll it's taking on them as well. So I just want to thank the team from the bottom of my heart, the housing team of the housing options, the prevention team, and also housing strategy, who are working like Billy-O to try and sort out this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak on this part of block of 12? Councillor Withington.
Thank you. I apologise for my voice in advance. I want to talk about the approval for the additional capital budget for the, no, wrong one. Item 5, recommendation 5 on the Lees, which brings me great joy. This play park has been a very sad play park considerable time. It's on the seafront. It actually fulfills many roles. It fulfills the role for tourism as well as an activity in Sheringham, but it's an important play park for the town where people live in the town for residents. And it also plays an important role for a lot of the school visitors and visits that we have that come from our excellent outdoor education facilities that we've got nearby as well. They often use that as a lunch spot and a bit of recreation time for their groups. So it's a very important play park. It has suffered terribly because of its location. It has a very hostile climate there on the seafront. Those of you who have stood to the right of Marble Arch will know well that feeling of almost being blown over and horizontal rain and etc. All of which is incredibly damaging to the kit that we have there. And we are literally down now, I think, to climbing frame is left in that park. It is really a very sorry state of affairs. It's one that we've been trying to address for some time. And I'm really pleased now that as we're developing the quality of life strategy further and the play equipment strategies, etc., that we're looking to put this money into that park, which will be a big asset for the town, both economically in terms of tourism, but also for the health and well-being of our residents. So I hope you appreciate what an important step this will be. And I know we're looking at using sustainable play equipment made from recycled plastics and marine waste, which again, there's a plastic-free town for Sheringham. That's a really good plus as well. So I really very much hope that people agree that this is a good use of council money. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to confirm that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee met on the 15th of November and agreed to support all 5 recommendations that you have before you.
Thank you very much. So do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Shires and a seconder? Councillor Fredericks? Lots of hands went up. Can I take a vote on that, please? All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to part 2 of the Councillor Shires show.
Well, this is the most exciting paper. It's the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. I won't go into any detail, but for the context, if you look on page 107, there is further information about the current economic state and interest rates as up to date at the point that this report was written. But I won't say any more on this.
Thank you. And can I take it that you are proposing the report? Thank you. Does anybody have anything they wish to say on this report? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to complete the process, so to speak, I can make the same confirmation in respect of this recommendation to full council from Overview and Scrutiny.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? In which case, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Heinrich. All those in favour, please. Unanimous. Thank you. And now part 3, please.
Yep, thank you very much. So we're on to page 119 of the agenda pack. The recommendations are set out, but if you look at recommendation 4 and go to paragraph 4.4, which is on page 124, you'll see confirmation that the care leavers discount is fully compensated by the county council. And the long debated second homes premium is recommendation 9. This has been something that we had agreed as a local authority. It feels like a very long time ago, but due to the levelling up bill being a little bit more delayed, rather than it coming into fruition for us as a council from the 1st of April next year, it will be delayed until 2025. The estimation is that will see an additional 550,000 coming to us as a local authority. I do want to just let everybody know that Sean Knight, our revenues manager, has started conversations with other revenues officers across the county, just see where everybody else is, because I feel that perhaps it's about time for us as a local authority to have a conversation with the county council about perhaps getting a fairer share of council tax for North Norfolk.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I make the same confirmation in respect of the 9 recommendations that you have before you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Withington.
Thank you. I'd like to comment really on the second home council tax issue. You're quite right, this has been going on for a very long time, and I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge how the North Norfolk Town and Parish Forum started this in around 2016, this campaign, and have worked very hard on bringing this forward to a successful conclusion. Interestingly, part of our discussions in 2016 were also about trying to keep a greater percentage of what was the Big Society Fund money then. In some ways we are still in the same position, but there is a significant pot of money, which I understand is around 9.3 million that's being generated from this council tax. So I'm really pleased that all that effort from the Town and Parish Forum has come to fruition, and it will help us to mitigate the impact. It's not about punishing second homeowners, it's about mitigating the impact for our people, and we will see the impact of that talking about homelessness in our motion later. So thank you.
Thank you. Lovely, thank you for proposing. Anybody, you're seconding, Councillor Adams seconding? Anybody else wishing to speak before we take the vote? In which case, can we all vote on that, please? All those in favour? It looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Councillor Dixon, do you have any other recommendations from the overview and scrutiny, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no recommendations, but I have one matter for mention, and I wouldn't normally do this, but it's a high-profile topic, and it's one that the council has some long-term position on, and that concerns Anglian Water and the emergency releases of sewage from discharges affecting our coastal and inland waters. I can say that those members of the previous administration may recall this full council made a recommendation that overview and scrutiny conducts a scrutiny exercise with respect to that topic. I can confirm that on the 15th of November, we had a question and answer session with Anglian Water for the second time. So that's roughly a year after they came the first time. And those questions and answers, if they're not already on the website, they will be published on the website. So I would encourage members to look at those, and they will then be familiar with the matters that came before us and the kind of progress that has been made in respect to that topic.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Right. Do we have any questions received from members? So then we move on to opposition business, please. And I believe the proposer of the opposition business is Councillor Cushing.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The motion you see before you, I've split it, is concerning a 4-day working week, which is becoming quite a topical issue in local government. I'm sure many of us will have seen the reports that South Cambridgeshire District Council had instigated a trial of a 4-day working week in January, which I believe is due to end in March of next year. Also recently, Norwich City Council agreed to investigate the feasibility of such a scheme. In response, the government's Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities has issued guidance that was published in October, the essence of which is incorporated into the motion. I don't intend to repeat that. You obviously read that for yourselves. Now, I appreciate this is a matter which hasn't, as far as I'm aware, been raised by this administration. So the purpose of just putting it before as a motion before the council tonight is just to prompt some discussion on an approach. And this is outlined in the 3 resolutions, which is to recognise the government's guidance on a 4-day working week, to collect and assess the evidence of any 4-day working week trials that have been conducted by other councils to inform an outline business case to justify it before proceeding with any trial or pilot exercise, and will commit not to introduce a 4-day working week at North Norfolk District Council without an overwhelming detailed business case showing substantial benefits to North Norfolk residents and businesses, and a concession from central government supporting the case. In addition to that, there are several corporate level risks that we would need to be considered. This includes demonstrating that the council is complying with a duty of best value, which is a statutory obligation, being fair to council taxpayers, and also being fair to staff. So I'd conclude by saying I appreciate this hasn't been mentioned by the administration before, but I think it'd be helpful for all of us to agree an approach in case they're minded to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon, I understand that you're going to second the motion. Do you wish to reserve your right, or do you wish to speak now?
Yes, that's right. I confirm my right to speak after the debate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Yes, we won't be supporting the motion, but I want to preface that by saying and to confirm that we have no plans in respect of introducing such practices at the moment in terms of a 4-day week. It's not, as you all know, in our action plan, we've not discussed or agreed any such proposals, as members are aware, and myself, the chief executive, etc., have had no such discussions. However, we should and we will learn from the experience in South Cambridgeshire, as I'm sure the sector at large will choose to do. That's councils of every colour in terms of political administration, and it's right that the sector learns from the implications and outcomes of such a model, and I look forward to learning more about it at a later stage after South Cambridgeshire have had the opportunity to see if it does work for them over a longer period of time. But beyond that period of time, of course, but until that period of time, it's essentially an irrelevance to here at North Norfolk. But the fact is that, you know, a growing number of businesses have been trialing this successfully and sticking with it, in fact, but the model has been given no time at all in local government before people are trying to pull it apart, the politicians and the Taxpayers Alliance, etc. And I think that's deeply unfair. I don't believe it is the government's place, nor indeed ours as a distant neighbouring authority, to interfere here whilst this is at its infancy, because this is at a trial stage and it needs to be given time. And we just shouldn't be seeing this level of interference with local government decisions generally. I mean, I do feel it's very simplistic populism, really. It's seeking to raise fears about something that hasn't truly materialised, and I'm disappointed to see before us sort of line by line list of demands from the Taxpayers Alliance. Some of us received that correspondence, and they make very little secret about the fact they're no real friends of local government, nor the service users that need our help and services the most. I don't see local Conservative groups proposing this motion elsewhere, and I hope, and I'm sure, in fact, they will. Local Conservative run councils will seek to learn from the work that South Cambridgeshire are doing, as well as will the sector as a whole. So certainly won't be supporting the motion. I don't support this level of interference at all in what is a very it's something that's very much in its infancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this? Councillor Shires.
Thank you. Oh dear. In the recent 2023 elections, we witnessed Conservative candidates across the country rebranding themselves as local Conservatives. A clear move to distance themselves from the broader National Party. However, this rebranding has raised questions about the sincerity of their commitment to local priorities, particularly when local Conservatives are here today presenting the government's position. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not being loud enough.
Sorry? Little slower.
Oh, okay, that's fine. However, it is crucial to highlight a fundamental conflict between the government's stance on a 4-day week and the government's commitment to devolution, which is designed to empower local authorities. The government has consistently championed devolution, advocating for the transfer of powers to local governments to enable them to make decisions best suited to their local context. However, the Ridge's opposition to a 4-day working week contradicts this principle by not only discouraging local councils from exploring and potentially implementing a 4-day week, the government is effectively centralising decision-making and undermining the autonomy that devolution is supposed to provide. This government is limiting this autonomy and stifling innovation at a local level. One of the core objectives of devolution is to foster innovation and adaptability at the local government level. Councils are meant to be testing grounds for new and effective ways of working, including potential changes to the traditional working week. The government's stance restricts this capacity for local innovation, limiting the ability of councils to tailor work arrangements to specific community and workforce needs. The government's position also clashes with the devolutionary goal of allowing local governments to develop economic and social strategies that reflect their unique circumstances. A 4-day working week has been linked to numerous benefits, including increased productivity, employee well-being, and environmental sustainability. By not supporting councils to explore this model, the government is hindering the ability to align workforce management with local economic and social aspirations. Local governments should be empowered, not restricted in their efforts to innovate and improve the working lives of their employees and the services provided to their communities. In light of these conflicts, it's evident that there's a pressing need for alignment between the government's devolution policy and its stance on the employment practices like the 4-day working week.
Thank you. Councillor Toy, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Shires has covered a lot of what I wanted to add in there. But I just wanted to say that we've got something here that is asking us to resolve to recognise the guidance of 4-day working week, and that, you know, should we decide to look at this, that we have to have a case for it. But it's based on a thing that the government issued that says the government does not support a 4-day working week in local authorities as it does not believe that it delivers local taxpayers value for money. The government does not expect councils to adopt this arrangement. Based on what evidence is my question. So I can't support this because it's not based on anything substantial. It's a knee-jerk reaction, and so I agree that we need to do stuff on evidence if we choose to go that route, but I can't support this because it's not based on anything real. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, we obviously have to take account of business efficiency. You know, we must work as effectively as possible. And I'll just refer members to a new report from the Autonomy think tank. Artificial intelligence could enable millions of workers to move to a 4-day week. As a study, and it's focused on UK and US. They note that too many studies of AI, large language models and so on slowly focus on either profitability or a jobs apocalypse. This study tries to show that when the technology is deployed to its full potential, purpose of technology is shifted. It can not only improve work practices, but also improve work-life balance. In other words, we have new technologies which we need to look to apply. And if the result ultimately is that working hours can reduce, but efficiency remain the same, then so be it. Interestingly, note that the local authorities of City of London, Elmbridge and Wokingham are among those that, according to the think tank, hold the highest potential for workers, with 38% or more of the workforce able to reduce their hours in the coming decade. We have to be able to take a flexible approach to efficiency, to introducing new technologies, and those technologies are coming at us so fast that keeping up is going to be nigh on impossible. I'll tell you that from having spent 30 years trying to introduce technology in schools. You never keep up. It's always 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. So we must have a flexible approach. Therefore, I cannot support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Fredericks.
Sorry, by tonight you'd have had enough of my voice. Working 4-day weeks doesn't mean the council's going to be open just 4 days. It means that staff work on a rota system. They'll probably do more hours to catch up as well. So it doesn't mean that Thursday afternoon, doors shut and you can't contact the council. I just wanted to make that quite clear.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Withington.
Right. Thank you. What's disappointing to me about this motion is twofold, actually. Our communities and economy are as a result of our catastrophic government actions facing crisis. We have a cost of living crisis, a climate change crisis, a housing crisis, exorbitant rents, no fault evictions, and councils like ours where we don't have a clue from one year to the next what our government funding will be. And we haven't done for 5+ years. Yet the only opposition business you as local Conservatives come up with to support and improve the lives of our communities and businesses in the most difficult of times is to agree with an out-of-touch government response to not bring a 4-day week. A 4-day week plan, which has never been considered by this council, is not part of our corporate plan for the next 4 years, as you well know, and not to my knowledge has been raised by staff. The motion is therefore disappointing, as it reflects, in my view, a failure of the opposition to take an opportunity to meaningfully represent the people who elected you in North Norfolk and bring forward something, a motion that would generate positive change for our communities. It's disappointing, secondly, because it can be assumed, I believe, that if you were in control of the council, the fact that you ask for a business case to be considered and evidence to be evaluated, you must consider that this is not normal practice. The positive peer review acknowledges the work we do as a good council, and I believe we would not attempt anything that we had not done a good business case on, as even to be considered in our council agenda. The principle, if this motion is passed, prevents the innovation and exploration of good working practices. And that, for us, in our administration, is at the heart of all our work. The fact that you ask for it and you ask us to support this government guidance, which has not gone through this process, suggests to me that you are pandering to political posturing and the democratic process is either a novelty or not at the heart of the way and you all operate. So again, this motion is disappointing as it reflects, as I said previously, an opportunity to actually bring something forward and not just big political statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Withington. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I have a statement I would like to make on this. This government talks a good game about devolution of powers, yet when a council leader steps up and take brave decisions to take their council forwards, they jump in and vilify them at the first opportunity. Perhaps they should get their own house in order before attacking those at the front line of providing support to their residents. All council leaders face a range of challenges unique and individual to their own authorities. Have our colleagues on the opposition benches taken the time to investigate why this 4-day working week trial was started in the first place? In case not, let me enlighten you. As we all know, councils across the country are facing a recruitment and retention crisis, and this has been compounded by Conservative cuts to local government, meaning increased funding is not a viable option. For years, the recruitment and retention of good staff into the public sector has got harder and harder, so leaders have had to work with their teams to try new, innovative solutions. Councils have been forced to innovate to respond, and South Cambridgeshire is no different in this regard. South Cambs is at the heart of a high-tech community with a wealth of opportunities for talented individuals, with many private companies offering a 4-day working week. This is the 21st century, not the 1800s, and people working in the public sector expect to be treated no different to their colleagues working in the private sector. Yes, the public absolutely have a right to expect that service levels are maintained and that positive outcomes for residents, local businesses and staff are at worst maintained at current levels, but are always striving for better. Thanks to the 4-day working week trial that the authority is still ongoing, they have already saved hundreds of thousands of pounds this year in agency staff fees and have already recruited to over 50% of the most difficult posts to fill. So I struggle to see why the government objects to these savings. The council's performance is consistently amongst the best in the country, exceeding or meeting the vast majority of targets. I think my colleagues are missing the point. Local government is for local government, and central government should focus on keeping their own house in order, taking the plank out of their own eye before taking the splinter out of ours. As you are aware and have already been assured, there are no plans to introduce a trial in North Norfolk, though you may wish to consult your colleagues in other authorities. I'm disappointed but not surprised that only a month after we talked about running a collaborative council for the good of our residents, this politically motivated motion has been brought forward, and I will be supporting the leader this evening. Thank you. Councillor Dixon, I believe it is your time to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'll keep my mentions brief. Clearly there's, I think, lots of disappointment been expressed so far, and I suspect that's probably shared on this side of the chamber as well, because this is simply a opportunity for a discussion and no more than that on what an approach might be. Yes, we might all have views about what central government should or shouldn't be doing, and I don't think there's one of us that would want to restrict what we as a local government would want to do. It doesn't seek to do that. So I think in terms of turning it around and reading into it or taking from it, if you like, what's not there is not the most helpful approach to hear. I can't put it much more simply than that, really. This place is meant to have a discussion. It's about a debate. It's about exploring kind of where our thoughts might be. You may not agree that this is a topic that sits at the top of the priorities, but it is topical, and who knows what its potential might be here. And I think it's important that we all keep an open mind, and that's what this approach attempts to do. Keep an open mind. You may read into that whatever you like, and I think that there may well be party political reasons why that might be the thing to do. I will probably say not much more than that, because I think that it is disappointing that we've not had a more, what I will call, constructive and positive debate. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. You would like to sum up, Councillor Cushing?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we've actually been debating, we've been debating one motion and you've been debating something entirely different. You've been debating an attempt to implement a 4-day working week. This is not, as Councillor Dixon has articulated, this is not what the motion is about. The motion is about the requisites that this council should put in place if it considers to go down that road. And it is interesting listening to the voracious response from the Liberal Democrat members to this, that though you may not be top of your agenda, and indeed I'm sure you probably aren't planning to do it within the next 4 years, clearly there would be a desire and intention to do so if you had the chance. That's what I take away from this. I suspect that's what many residents, when this is reported, will take away from this in the debate. I suspect many of them will not be as enthusiastic about the principle of a 4-day working week as many of you are. But any day, this is a motion about what those prerequisites would be if you were going to go down that road, actually not the debate of a 4-day working week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So this piece of business has been duly proposed and seconded. So I'd like to ask for all those in favour, please. And those against, please. Thank you. Okay, are there any abstentions, please? So that's 22 against and 11 for, so the motion fails. Right. We have a second piece of, we have a motion this evening on the homelessness crisis. Would the proposers like to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. And now for something that really does matter. So the homelessness crisis motion. Homelessness has increased by 40% in North Norfolk over the last 3 years, reflecting similar pressures in districts and borough councils throughout England. We continue to see this number increasing, and between the 1st of April and 31st of April this year, 228 households have been assessed as threatened with or are already homeless. The primary reasons for homelessness are private landlord evictions. So the private landlord wants to sell on or to convert into a holiday let. Friends and family are no longer able to accommodate. And probably most horriblest of them all is domestic abuse. At the 31st of October, there were 75 households in temporary accommodation. And this is an overall increase of 33% on the same date in 2022. The number of children living in a temporary accommodation has also increased by 44% compared to October 22. This means that 85 children are living in unstable accommodation, and the majority of cases living without space to play, away from schools, work, support networks, and actually mostly out of our district, as I mentioned earlier. It's overwhelmingly disruptive and challenging and mentally harmful. There's not just a human case of temporary accommodation, there's also a major financial cost, as we mentioned earlier. The council is only able to reclaim a small proportion of the amount it spends on nightly bed and breakfast type accommodation. If the council places a household in bed and breakfast, it costs £700 a week, and we are only able to claim £98 of that. So the council and the council taxpayers of North Norfolk have to stump up the difference. The council's net cost per purchase TA nightly has risen from 371k in 21-22 to a forecast of £910,000 this year. So that's still December. And in April, probably 1.3 million. It's horrendous. We're constantly exploring options to increase our provision of decent temporary accommodation. And it's important that we focus on the long-term solutions to ensure that households stay in temporary accommodation is as brief as possible, and they can secure a more permanent housing solution. In addition to our homeless pressures, we have seen a significant reduction in the supply of permanent accommodation, with a 38% reduction in available properties across our housing registered partners. So this is our housing associations. The reasons of reduction are complex, but associated with reduced levels of new build because of nutrient neutrality and people not wanting to move because of the cost of living pressures. We have over 2,500 households on our housing list, and the severe shortage of social rented homes on the Your Choice Your Home Housing Association houses is sparse, and there are 150 bids for each property advertised through Your Choice Your Home. With additional pressure for families' homes, with some properties receiving over 300 bids. And what chance have you got? Private sector rental is out of reach for most applicants, as the local housing allowance levels of all North Norfolk residents has been frozen by the government since 2020, based on rent levels of 2018-2019 financial year. And I do recognise a tiny 6% uplift in people's benefits, but it ain't going to touch the sides. 2-bedroom houses in this area, the lowest you can find, £750 to £795 a month. It's a ridiculous disparity. The council are committed to tackling homelessness crisis through all available means, and we are trying to tackle it through all available means. Local authorities, regardless of political administration, have been let down by central government's lack of investment in building affordable rented homes and enabling affordable homes for sale for local people. And this has left councils ill-equipped to tackle the housing crisis. Affordable new homes construction performs a pivotal role in addressing temporary accommodation crisis, and this will be a key contributor to the reduction of supply and demand driven private rental revenue costs for local authorities. Again, I also want to highlight the extreme stress on our housing teams who are listening to the most vulnerable and desperate members of our community with limited resources to help them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Councillor Adams, I believe you're seconding this motion. Do you wish to speak now or at the end?
I'll speak later on. Thank you.
Thank you. So, would anybody like Councillor Cushing?
Madam Chair, are we able to submit some amendments to this motion?
So I was made aware that you wanted to submit an amendment. We can hear the amendments. What I propose to do, because we still only have 30 minutes for the debate this evening, is to take 10 minutes to debate the amendments and then 20 minutes for the substantive motion.
Right.
Okay, so please feel free to speak on the Councillor Cushing has the right to speak first. Councillor Fredericks.
So can I amend away now?
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you for that. I note the motion, it starts as the leader of the council and the leader of the opposition groups to sign a letter. So I take from that that what we're looking here this evening is for something that we have cross-party consensus across all groups. And I would say this is an issue which is really too important for party political, taking party political sides. I'd make the point that if this administration was run by the Conservative group, we were facing exactly the same issues and working hard to try and solve them. So in that way, we've come up with some amendments which I think would enable us to get fully behind this motion in order to actually do that. The other point I'd actually make is what we're dealing with here this evening are the symptoms of an issue, not the cause. And the cause are varied and extensive. So we look at that, we have in the country, we have as part of that, we have demand coming from legal immigration, we have demand.
Councillor Cushing, sorry, could you make the amendments, please?
Oh, you want me to make the amendments? Oh, sorry.
Well, could you state what the amendments are, please?
Oh, right, I didn't really, sorry, you make that clear, Madam Chair. Okay. So the amendments we want to make are for, the first one is a very minor tweak. It says the leader of the council and leaders of the opposition group to write to the relevant Secretary of State. Instead of begin, we would like to replace that with the word re-energise the process of readdressing the challenges to the housing crisis. To the second amendment, we want to add amend with the addition so that it would actually be the local housing allowance to be urgently increased to realistic levels for Norfolk in line with private rental amounts and the removal of private rental market disincentives which have been applied over the last 25 years. And then for item number 3, we'd want a central government cross-party working group. So this would actually replace number 3. This would be a central government cross-party working group to explore how land could quickly be released for sustainable low growth and affordable housing, and how house construction and building conversions to residential could be ramped up. And then finally, we'd want to replace what's there at the moment with government cross-party working group to explore national planning policy changes to take stricter control of land banks so that land from whatever sources can be quickly built on using innovative housing schemes which transform the viability assessments and encourage builders to work alongside local housing authorities to create more effective delivery models. And added into that would also be NNDC to task the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party to consider and draft changes it wants to see to the National Planning Policy Framework to address the affordability, land release, and build incentive issues and submit these to central government for action.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon, I understand you're seconding the amendment. Did you wish to speak at the moment?
I reserve my right to speak after the debate. Thank you.
Okay. So then I open up the floor for debate for 10 minutes of our 30 minutes. Thank you. Councillor Fredericks. Yeah. So we're discussing, just to be clear, we're just discussing the amendments at the moment. Okay.
I do appreciate you bringing the amendments, but it was about 3 minutes before the meeting started that I got sight of these. So I've been trying to rack my brains around it. So number one, to begin with re-energise, I don't find relevant. Also to removal of the private rental market disincentives applied over the last 25 years. So is that environmental? Is that tenants' rights? Is that section 21? So I don't find that agreeable at all. If it was to say levelling up regulations for housing for holiday lets to private rental, then that would work. A cross-government party to explore how land can be quickly released. Again, you know, I'm afraid that's at local level. Government cross-party to work for explore national policy, blah, blah, blah. No. So I'm not going to accept these. And I have to say, along with the disappointment, I'm disappointed that vulnerable refugees and immigrants were mentioned as a cause of housing crisis. It is not in North Norfolk. I'd love to show you the stats, but I will not listen and stand by when refugees are at the cause of housing crisis in North Norfolk. It isn't. I've told you what they are. And it's domestic abuse. It's people being evicted from their landlords. It's family and friends not being able to accommodate them. So this is not about refugees. This is about our local residents and their suffering. Thank you. I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Councillor Varley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm glad that we're now actually on a vital, important topic. This is very important to our communities. I do thank the opposition for bringing amendments, the fact that they're engaging and we can proactively move this forward. I think it's important to have these discussions. However, I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague, Councillor Wendy Fredericks. I just don't think those amendments are sufficient enough. So therefore, I can't support the opposition's amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I think given the importance actually of this topic, it's really important that it just doesn't turn into some party political spat, and possibly if the independents were here, did something to say as well. I think what's really important, and I think it'd be good if all three leaders signed it, and I think some degree of consensus on what's said is important. So let's not make it party political. Let's try and get something that actually can be written to the appropriate minister and that has consensus right across this room, because I think that gives a lot more strength than anything else.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, it is a bit disappointing that we've been given such short notice of the opposition amendment. We have a screen in front of us. I don't see the amendment being put up there. I don't see any distribution of a printed copy of the amendments. So it's a little bit difficult to have a sort of a meaningful debate about it, to be honest. But one or two things that I just want to point out. A roof over somebody's head isn't a nice to have. And at the risk of making the opposition nervous, I would like to point out that it is in fact a human right. And government policies consistently down recent years played fast and loose with that right. There are two main drivers of homelessness in this district: domestic abuse and Section 21 no-fault eviction notices, which 4 years ago, in the manifesto of the current government, they pledged to actually reform and remove that right that landlords have. There's been recent mention of it, but we now know it's been kicked into the long grass. Please don't laugh when I tell you that the reason for that is because the courts are so busy, they wouldn't be able to cope with the rush of other notices for breach of tenancy agreements, which landlords would resort to. And therefore, I'm really not going to support these amendments. The Working Party already deals with the request in the amendment from the opposition, unless I've been living in a parallel universe over recent years and chairing the Working Party and have completely missed the point, but I don't think that I have. So what we need to do is to respond, as we have been doing, through consultations from the government, which our planning authority receive, asking for responses from this authority.
Councillor Brown, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. We're at the end of our 10
I
minutes.
will, Madam Chairman. What we need to do is to respond in the manner that the government asks us to, not by joint letters signed by leaders of this party. We need to do it through the proper channels as the government invite us to do on the Working Party.
Thank
you,
you.
Madam Chairman.
Right. Come back to Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I do indeed second this this motion, or this amendment, I beg your pardon, to the motion. I don't that there's a single councillor in this chamber that doesn't support the aspirations of this motion and would love to wave a magic wand to give us a magic solution to the problem. So I think we must come from a common position, a common perspective there. We may not share a common approach. This isn't a short-term problem, nor is there a single cause, and thus the thrust of our effort should focus on recognizing and addressing the causes rather than continuing to just simply address the symptoms. If we continue to do that, we will not succeed. And I can say that on this side of the chamber, we want to see success. So this much amended motion seeks to do our utmost to influence others in higher places to realistically address the causes and increase resources. It also requires us to explore what more we can do and think outside of the box. And I take Councillor Brown's point, but I do think that there's much more that we can do within planning policy and built heritage, and maybe there's a discussion that he and I can have about how we might do something about that in the future. So it requires a joint working and some bold leadership to explore and kickstart new initiatives and practical mitigation measures to help manage demand and increase capacity. I fully support the amended motion, and ask that party differences be set aside in favour of uniting to do much more to resolve the challenges this crisis present and display that we have got a common sense approach to what is a very vexing problem. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So the motion amendment has been duly proposed and seconded, and we have had the debate. So we are now going to take a vote on the amendment, not on the substantive motion, but on whether the amendment is accepted to the motion. So can I have all those in favour of accepting the motion amendment, please? But we're going to have a very strange moment then. Okay. Victoria's got her hand up as well. 11. Thank you. And all those against accepting the amendment? Thank you. So the amendment falls. Thank you. So now we move to the main debate, and we have 20 minutes debating time left. So I ask who would like to speak on the main motion, please. I don't think you need to read out the main motion. Everyone should have read their papers. Anyone wish to speak on this? Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't wish to go back on the amendment that was brought forward, but it's very difficult for many of us with it coming so short, considering this has been out for a week, published. I think some of us would have liked more. So whilst we've stood our ground, and I, personally have reasons for that from the words that I could pick out. But this, look, what this does is it specifically asks for action in areas that we know need action from our experience and from our knowledge and from what our officers bring to us, the people on the ground, what we see ourselves. So I fully support the motion. We need to take these actions and request specific things rather than, as I understand the amendment, and I know we've dealt with that, the working groups and things to go, cross-party groups to go and sort it out. We already know the answers. We have enough experience. It's been going on long enough. So I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just respond to one or two of the points there. To Councillor Fredericks, I didn't actually blame refugees. I was simply making the point there are wider pressures there that are causing across the nation and pressures on housing. And you often said that you are disappointed. Well, I can argue that I am disappointed that you put a motion forward asking me to sign it without actually consulting me on it. Had you approached my group saying you wanted to come at the motion on homelessness, I'm sure we could have sat down and personally come up with some wording here, which we could all happily back. As it is, we'll probably back it anyway. But I hear a lot of talk about wanting to work across the chamber, but in reality, when we get down to it, it doesn't seem to be an awful lot of reaching out to us at all. It just simply we do what you effectively, long as we're doing what you want to do, that's fine. But the minute we turn around and say, actually, we have some queries and questions on that, it doesn't seem to be fine. I'll leave members of your group to reflect on that if you may. But it is a serious problem in terms of doing that. What we're looking at today, there are no easy answers to it. And whatever else to do, I will pledge that my group will work with the administration, see what we can do in order to help mitigate the severe issues that we are experiencing across the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Withington.
Thank you. I do support this motion. Councillor Fredericks given you the stats as to what it looks like in terms of numbers. This is what it looks like in reality. We've now reached the point, despite our council housing teams and property services, Herculean efforts, and they are Herculean, providing temporary accommodation where people who would be considered at the top of the most high priority housing need are not even getting a look. Not a look in at a chance of a home. And you heard Councillor Fredericks say that there's 150 bids per home. Much of my casework is dealing with finding homes for people, and this is probably not unusual for most of my community-focused colleagues. I've been dealing with a family, however, who illustrate this terrible crisis. We are now and we are now in, and how our North Norfolk residents are being let down as a result of this failure to address the housing crisis, not by ourselves. A professional working single mum with a daughter of 11 years of age suddenly experienced catastrophic health conditions, which were life-changing. They've resulted in her being disabled, visually impaired, unable to work, and her young daughter taking on the role of young carer. They are one household of 597 in North Norfolk looking for a 2-bedroomed home. As a result of a no-fault eviction, they found themselves on benefits, homeless, and unable to afford a private rental with a local housing allowance of £600 and rent on a 2-bed property in Sheringham in the region of 800. The majority of landlords also refusing, although it's not officially refusing, to take those on universal credit. Despite valiant efforts by our housing options team, this left nothing other than a B&B in Norwich available to them, away from this young carer's school, her friends, her young carer's support group, and family and friends for mum, and away, importantly, from the rehabilitation support so desperately needed by mum. Working with the community, and with great difficulty, we have managed to find someone who will, out of the goodness of their heart, rent a flat out at a reduced rent and also accept a tenant on UC. There are some incredible people around. And when we visited the flat, the young carer turned to me and said, "I can't believe this. I put a home on the top of my Christmas list to Santa." Okay. Mum was so overwhelmed, she just cried. This is just one family. I can't do this for all the desperate people in Sheringham and the desperate calls that I get and the desperate emails. If we are at that point in society where the most vulnerable in our society are to be just cast aside into bed and breakfast and their lives even further blighted, then we are at a very low point. I cannot begin to imagine how emotionally hard and devastating that is for our housing officers to face this on a daily basis either. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank them for all their efforts in these difficult times. Our government needs to acknowledge that we are facing a crisis, and they need to take significant action on many levels to solve this and move towards change. I therefore support the motion, and I hope all of the council will support it as well for the benefit of North Norfolk.
Thank you, Councillor Withington. Councillor Shires, who wishes to speak.
Thank you. We're all here because of the North Norfolk residents, and I just want to speak about some of the wonderful people that I've been able to meet over the last 4 years, and by wonderful I mean completely resilient and bold and ferociously fighting for their families. And part of that experience I've shared with Councillor Fredericks when we've been organising ovens and tea towels and other things that people who have just moved away from temporary accommodation have needed. And part of that has been sitting with women on the Domestic Abuse Forum who have shared harrowing stories of protecting their families. And the only barrier to that has been a roof over their head. Women and men have stayed in situations which are dangerous purely because they've got nowhere else to go. So what I want to say to those people in North Norfolk who are barely keeping a roof over their heads, who are sleeping on sofas and wearing out the goodwill of their friends and families and trying to keep a roof over their friends' heads or their neighbours' heads, and still trying to hold down a job and still trying to get their children to school and still trying to turn up every day and survive. We hear you. And we're listening, and we are going to try and do everything that we can do within our power to try and make this situation better. And right now, I'm sorry that we can't put a roof over everybody's head, but we're trying.
Thank you. Councillor
Madam Chairman, thank you.
Hankins. So I wanted to make sure I get it. Wanted to make sure I got it right this time.
Good, thank you.
No?
As a relative newcomer to both Norfolk and the council, the perception of North Norfolk is that it's a very wealthy area. I was shocked, literally shocked, to read of the deprivation and homelessness
that is experienced in this. The term crisis, homeless crisis, was completely new to me for this area. And in discussion with a number of my friends, they were horrified too. So I support Councillor Toy in saying the time is over for discussion. Action is required, and action is required now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? Sorry, Councillor Dixon and then Councillor Ringer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, you've already heard that I am very supportive of the aspirations of this motion. And got to use that word again, disappointment that we haven't taken the opportunity of putting more emphasis and making this heavyweight on action. Because I agree with Councillor Hankins that we need to stop talking about it. We need to get on and do some action. And that's what our amendment was intended to do. We've passed that point, I realise, but we haven't really passed it, because although we must finish this meeting with a vote, that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be working across the benches. And I've already offered Councillor Brown a conversation about how we might work forward in planning policy and built heritage. So let's not lose these opportunities here to inject some action into something. And that's really was the sentiment behind much of our amendment. It's a shame in a way that we weren't able to present that on the screen, because that would have been, I think, more meaningful to people who had not that time to consider it in full. But we are where we are. And so I would like to support this, but I have to say, with the reservations that I've already just said, I'm in a difficult position, I have to say, because I certainly want to support it, but I want to do much more than this. And I know that there are, on this side of the chamber, that enthusiasm and that urgency is there. It's not about emotion and talking, it is about action and fire in the belly to deliver. So, Madam Chairman, that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ringer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I think that this motion does require a united voice, actually, because it is such a issue for us in North Norfolk. Last full council, the opposition group brought forward a motion regarding Blakeney surgery. And on that occasion, there were no political differences on that. We spoke as one. We united on that. And I must say that I think that that is what this motion requires. Last minute amendments that aren't available for people to see is not a recipe for collaboration, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. If that is the approach that you want to take. Ultimately, though, we need to put that to one side. We need to look at the situation that we have got in North Norfolk. What has been presented here in this motion is absolutely reasonable for us to be doing as a council. I don't see anything there that is politically motivated. We are literally just trying to do what we can for our local residents. So just like we did with Blakeney surgery last month, I think that this requires us to speak as one, and I hope that everybody will vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ringer. Anybody else wishing to speak? Sorry, Councillor Adams.
Yes, I just wanted, unless there was no one else to speak.
No, it doesn't look like anyone else
Yeah,
wants to
thank
speak, so
you.
I'll ask to come back to you.
Well, first of all, I just will concede one point to Councillor Cushing in terms of, informing him ahead of the motion, and that's something, we will undertake to do in future, so I accept that. But what I would say is, obviously, there's been plenty of opportunities for the opposition group to get involved during the policy development, during the corporate plan working parties or the annual action plan working parties. So, there was a time there where we could have had such discussions about really working together on the sort of policies that Councillor Dixon was just referring to. But that aside, I think it has been heartwarming recently to see so many councils coming together in such large numbers to discuss the issues that we have now and agree a common position. And certainly in respect of lobbying the government, we had the astounding attendance at the Eastbourne conference, which was organised in a relatively short time, actually. And of course, we contributed to that, or at least Councillor Fredericks did as portfolio holder. I mean, we just cannot go on like this. I'm sure it will be a position of the sector as a whole that the announcements today and the autumn statement don't go nearly far enough. And I think I've broadly seen the district council network say the same. Don't be under any assertions that this goes far enough. We need a realignment here to deal with this as a national priority, and the issues, you know, certainly not the fault of the homeless or those at risk of being so. And of course, as we know, the local housing allowance, one of the key issues we have here, does need to be being raised annually. The temporary accommodation costs are obviously crippling many authorities, and unless action is taken now, councils will begin issuing Section 114 notices imminently. This is the words I'm hearing from many other local authority leaders from across the country when I speak to them, and with the costs that are being faced by us in responding to the housing crisis, again, in particular, the temporary accommodation now continuing to balloon beyond any sort of control. And as one commentator said recently, if you were trying to design a housing crisis, everything possible has been done to make that happen in reality. And you know, that really is quite challenging. You know, it shows you the sheer ineptitude really of our national approach to this issue, and it's gone on for too many generations, and the chickens have come home to roost. Frankly, it's here, and we've not dealt with it effectively. So enough is enough, and we do need a credible housing plan nationally. So certainly support the action that we are intending to take here, and it's a continuation of the actions that we've been taking alongside the rest of the sector. Thank you.
Thank you. So now the motion having been duly proposed and seconded, can I have a vote? All those in favour, please. Thank you very much, and thank you. It's nice to work together. That concludes this evening's meeting, everyone. Thank you very much indeed.